Good evening, everybody, and welcome to the first Dear South Africa live stream, I think, in the platform's history. And a man that needs no introduction to my left and your right, Rob Hutchinson, founder and head honcho in charge of DearSA, and Chloe Castle, operational director of DearSA. Lady and gentlemen, good evening. It's good to see you guys online.
Yes, it certainly is. Hi, Chloe.
Good, thanks. And you, Rob? Hi, Gideon. Good to see you.
Hi, Chloe. It's always good to see us. I'm about to say at least one of us looks like really good on the stream tonight. Like, not speaking for myself or Rob, but on cutting to the chase, because we've got quite a tight schedule tonight. We're going to talk about public participation, who we are, what we do. The things the audience and the contributors and the members and the public generally want to know about DearSA and public participation, and just sort of dispel a bit of that fog that makes it perhaps a sort of amorphous thing that people can't quite get a hold of what it actually is. Then we're going to segue a bit to some of our actual success stories and why this stuff matters, including the present state of the National Health Act regulations, where we are in that process, what the public had to say, that court case and that sort of thing. And then of extraordinary relevance to our present situation in South Africa, ESKOM, level 6 rolling blackouts, this sort of thing. We're bringing on a special guest, Martin van Staden, policy advisor to the Free Market Foundation and Sakeliga, and he's going to be chatting to us at about the half an hour mark about actual tangible practical solutions and not just airy-fairy stuff about ESKOM. I think everyone's heard more than enough of that. So, and then we'll be interacting with everyone in the comment section, obviously, as well. That's a big part of this. So I'm going to start with you, Rob. What is DearSA? What do we actually do?
Yeah, it's a good question. Actually, I'm never sure what we actually do from day to day. I just know it's a lot and it keeps us busy. But no, but besides that, it's public participation. So we're an organization that facilitates public participation in all forms across all spheres of government. And it's quite easy. We do it by informing the public of new legislation that's out, new amendments, new draft bills or proposals from governments, or even simple things like tariff increases at a municipal level or within state-owned entities such as ESKOM. We create a simple-to-use platform, or we have a simple-to-use platform, and we create a campaigner on that platform where people can go, have their say, read about the policy that's been proposed, have their say. Our system then generates a proper legally sound document in the background and delivers it as an individual submission through to government. We then also keep a record of that and then produce a report at the end of it. So it's really just an opportunity for people to influence policy and draft policy, or even government decisions before they are made, which avoids lengthy court cases after the fact.
Well, that kind of ties in. We were brainstorming a bit of a 3-word, 3-sentence slogan to really boil down to brass tacks what it is we do. And one of the ideas last night was, DearSA summed up, is stop bad laws, bring positive change using your voice, which is kind of what we are. Would you say we're a conduit for the public taking direct ownership of their own democratic processes?
Definitely.
Would that be fair?
Definitely. It's a system that shifts the power of democracy back to the people, the way it should be, by getting them involved in the government decisions that happen on a day-to-day basis.
So, Rob, the other question that people tend to ask a lot online is, does it actually make a difference? Is public participation important? Does it make a difference? Does their voice matter? We see a great many people feel extraordinarily despondent about it. And you read comments from disheartened South Africans that go, I don't feel my voice makes a difference. The government just do what they want anyway. What difference does it make? It's a waste of time, and so on and so forth. So I think your response to that would probably be key.
It definitely makes a difference. I mean, we've seen so many success stories where government has amended policy or draft policy that is viewed by the public as quite ridiculous or overbearing or simple overreach from the government. They have actually withdrawn it due to public pressure, and we have the evidence to support that. We even have notifications and acknowledgement from government that says that due to our process and input and the input of the public through our platform, that this policy has been amended and taken care of. So definitely it does. It's hard to measure success in what we do because we don't fight government. We actually assist government to be a better and more efficient government, which is more transparent and accountable. So if we put out a campaign and it gets a considerable amount of participants, we consider that a success. If government goes against the will of the public or completely flouts the rules around public participation, and we take action against that, then that's another success story, because we use the evidence that we have and the participation from the public as a solid foundation for a court case to challenge government in instances such as that.
And I think that is something that people should perhaps remember and take to heart, is the fact that the process doesn't stop with your comment, ladies and gents. The comment is just part of an ongoing process of so-called democracy, for want of a better word, to all encapsulate it. When your comment is delivered, it forms the foundation of literally everything else that follows. And I think we'll illustrate that better when we start mentioning specific success stories. The thing is also, with public participation, there's no definitive beginning or end to it. Well, there is a definitive beginning when it is published for comment, but the process of shaping legislation, stopping bad laws, amending bad laws to be less bad, or having them pulled all together, or encouraging good laws to be passed, that only ends really if there's a definitive end state. And in many of these current processes, there is no end state yet. But the fact that there is no end state is in itself a victory, because an end state without the public's input would have been disastrous. Example, Rob, how many comments have we delivered since 2018, more or less?
Oh, it's hard to say. I'd say well over 4 million individual comments, easily. If you take our subscriber base, which is built from people who have participated, that's sitting at over 1.4 million. And each one of those has participated in at least one, and I'd say an average of about 4. There you get to that easily over 4 million comments that have been delivered. So definitely, it's a successful way, a platform, and it definitely creates impact in amending policy.
So success stories, where has public input led to, let's call it, what do we define as a success specifically?
Yeah, that's always a tough question. I think I mentioned it just now. Yeah. So success for us is if a policy is re-amended. Remember, what we're commenting on here is draft policy and proposals, which are called bills. If we get a significant number of participants on a bill and the parliamentary committee reassesses that bill by taking into account the public participation, well, then that's a success, isn't it? So, because that wouldn't have happened unless we provided that input or gave the public an opportunity or a mechanism to have their say, to influence that bill. So that to be considered a success. Going further than that, if we have a court case, obviously, and we have a desirable outcome, that's a major success, although in a slightly different angle, although it would be always based on the public participation again. I think if I can put forward a great example of a success, I mentioned it quite recently in another podcast. It was through collaboration and input from the public. So a member of the public alerted the IRR to a quite concerning amendment to the Electoral Act, and that was only published in the Sunday Times. This member of the public then alerted the IRR. They picked it up, and unfortunately, it was on the last day given for public participation. IRR contacted us, and we contacted the minister, asked for an extension on it. We were granted 1 week, and we immediately launched a campaign. And when I say immediately, it was within hours of being notified of it. And I think we sent through, Chloe, you can correct me on this one, it was about 12,000 comments within 1 week, individual submissions from the public. And it was all based around the IR's concern and our concern over a certain clause in the Electoral Amendment Act, and that was to introduce a certain alternative type of voting method, which would have been electronic voting. So that was put forward to the public. We gave them an opportunity to comment, and after 1 week, the government came back to us and said they're withdrawing it, and they were specifically withdrawing that clause due to the input received from the public. That's a huge success story because it involves all aspects: public engagement, public being involved, influencing the outcomes, and then affecting a bill and stopping some quite what would have been disastrous policy going forward. And also showed that we collaborate with other entities, members of the public, and other non-profit organizations successfully.
Well, that's before I come to Chloe and Rob, that's a very, very good summary of it, I think. When I personally was confronted with examples of success stories, I would say, the 600,000 plus comments on expropriation without compensation was a big win for civil society, because it's only thanks to public pressure that didn't become law, and that even the aspects of it that are still up for discussion have significantly changed from the original proposal. It was the same with the Firearms Control Amendment Bill that wanted to seek to ban self-defense as a reason to own firearms in South Africa, and had such far-reaching other implications that essentially it would destroy private firearm ownership in South Africa as a whole, and prejudice the rights of 3 million people, excluding those indirectly affected by it. And it was the National Health Act regulations. I think we can definitely claim some form of success. Well, not we. When I say we, people who are watching this need to understand that every single person that participates in these things, that's their victory to own. We like talking about it as a DearSA victory because we're obviously proud of what we achieve and the fact of the processes we've put in place, but it's not us doing the winning. And Chloe, I think that's a great opportunity to bring you in, because a lot of people want to know what happened with the National Health Act regulations, and you're the lady with all the information. So good evening, nice to see you, and what's the story there?
But thanks for that, Gideon, and it's a big thanks to you and Rob as well. I think this is a really exciting opportunity, and a great opportunity to also engage with everybody that participates with DearSA. We haven't had this opportunity before, so just a warm welcome to everybody. And just to get started, I've got all the figures and facts in front of me here, so I don't tell you lies. But just to start, so these National Health Amendment Acts have been obviously an ongoing process, let me say, for the last 2 years, where all of our lives have been a little bit thrown into the tumble dryer. And as a result of that, I think everybody's gone through different waves of emotion, and it's certainly shown through all of these, the different campaigns and reporting that we've compiled. So with that, just to start, this particular report that I'm going to mention, let's just have a look here. So this particular report was the biggest comment generator out of our campaigns thus far. Not to say it's the only one, we've had a few others, but definitely our most successful, and we again being with the public included. And with that, it opened on the 15th of March and it closed. It only had 30 days on its comment period, which was quite short considering the volume that was coming through. And that being said, if we have a look through some of the content, just to also reiterate.
I can share any of the screens or the stats or the pictures that you need me to share to put it on screen for the viewers. So just let me know what you want me to bring up.
Okay, thanks, Gideon. I think in a second we can maybe get to the yes and the not fully and those stats just on that first section. Thank you for that. So I was just saying there, just to reiterate and echo what Rob's mentioned in the process of the public participation, what we do with the campaigns is that each entry is delivered, as an individual submission. It's not put into just one cluster. And that's very important. And we'll come to that in a second as to why. But all of these submissions were sent directly through to government. And if Gideon, I could maybe ask you to bring up that first set of data, just where we ask regarding the support.
100%. Let me do that for you right away. And it should be sharing. Let me just zoom in on what's relevant here.
Perfect. Thanks for that. We can actually maybe go one back, if that's all right, to the orange.
There we go.
Set of data. That's the one. Thank you. Okay, so just to explain what this means and also to reflect, we had 283,000 comments, more or less. And that was a massive number and a great, just from our organization, a great response from the public. So lovely to see that interaction. And just to work through the data, what Gideon is showing here for the viewers is that you can have a look through the different stats of the category. So very important when we are feeding back on all the reports is to identify who is in agreement, who is not fully in agreement, and those that are. So we've got 3 different scales, to have a look at and consider. So you'll see that majority here were in a full opposition. They weren't complying with or agreeing with what had been stated and set out in the National Health Act COVID regulations.
The big orange bit.
Sorry, Gideon?
The big orange part.
That's it. It's quite hard to miss. It's a blinding orange. So that was already, you'll see there at a 96%, which, when generating reports, we can see is very high. And thereafter followed by not fully at a 2.73% and yes, I do at 1.18%. So that was the minority. And then moving on to the next set of data, if you don't mind, please, Gideon, if we could, thank you. This just highlights the top concerns, and you'll see that there are quite a variety of different categories. So I won't run through all of them for the sake of time, but we had a landslide, and this is now the big blue part, where it was the proposed amendment in its entirety sitting at 59.96%. So, you're sitting at nearly 2/3 that have a problem with the entire regulation, which is data not to be concealed or overlooked. And through that, we've then assessed everybody's, individual comments and identified certain trends. And, I think each of the member of the public, or members of the public rather, have there's some items which are similar and it creates a theme, and then there's other items which are new points brought to the table. So it's a really insightful process to go through public participation, and the more thoughts and inputs we get, the more we love that. That's what we need to submit through to government. So that's just a little bit on the report. We've also outlined some comments. So if anybody would like to go and view the report in full detail, I think there's a whole 13 pages. We can submit the link in the chat perhaps, and then the viewers can have a look over there.
Oh, definitely. In fact, I will go so far as to do. We haven't actually published a report on this one yet, or have we?
So at this stage, we have uploaded. We are still receiving comments, so we've left this campaign open. The report was generated though, and I can see since we generated the report, we've had nearly 30,000 more responses, which is great. So that data is definitely not going to be, that feedback will not be going to no use.
I'll tell you what, I'm having some difficulty just locating the report link, but that's fine. I will make sure that I'll just put it in the description of this video so people can access it after the fact. But that is quite a strong response from the public pertaining how the proportion that we're wholly opposed to the amendments. And that also, just to illustrate to everybody, that 300,000 odd comments is what forms the foundation of the present legal challenge, which we may have a bit of time. We have 10 minutes to maybe quickly chat about that a bit. Rob and Chloe, both of you also flying close to the coalface on this one. I think our joint answering affidavit to the state was lodged yesterday.
Yeah, it was. It makes for interesting reading. It definitely does. The gist of it is that the minister is claiming that because he's withdrawn the limited regulations, that our case is now moot. We totally disagree, obviously, and because we want to set a legal precedent, and if we don't continue with the case, then the minister can at any time, for no reason whatsoever, just reinstate those regulations. So we have to go to court, which we are, and that's just on those limited regulations, which were the three regulations that were carried over and didn't undergo any public participation at all. We are also in the same case addressing these draft regulations, which are currently open for public comment, and we'll take the same approach on those. The idea there is to get rid of them completely, and if they want to introduce regulations or new COVID measures, if there's a new pandemic or a new virus or an uptick in the current virus, then they can do so through the Disaster Management Act again, but only under parliamentary oversight and with proper public consultation.
That is the thing that I found particularly concerning about the process, is that we discovered through the legal proceedings that the government, or rather the Minister of Health or senior people in his department, were sort of hell-bent on just forcing the regulations through without any due concern for public input. In fact, steamrolling over the public input by discarding it as generic. And that's when we were infamously referred to as terrorists and saboteurs that are undermining the authority of the state. And yeah, that includes you, Chloe. You're also a terrorist and saboteur, apparently, and as well as the 300,000 members of the public that commented, which was rather shocking. And I mean, that's a different topic for a different show. But I think something that also must be borne in mind by people is Dear South Africa is not just a conduit for public participation. We're also the guardians and protectors of that constitutionally mandated and protected process. And the fact that we are where we are and we can do what we do is, yes, we are grant recipients from outside trusts and beneficiaries of that. And we will tell you at the end who they are, because we are kind of obligated and we'd want to tell you who they are. But the reason why I want to look past them is it's hugely thanks to members of the public who give us once-off donations or who become monthly subscribers to us, that we can do what we do, that we've built this platform, that we're presently busy improving it, and that we are busy trying to work out ways to expand it, to increase our reach so that we can get more people's voices heard. Rob, maybe tell us, or actually Chloe, you've been flying very close to the coalface. What's going on with us expanding? What's the exciting developments on that front? There's a few things.
Yeah, I think that's a good question. Where do we start? Sorry, I see there's comments coming up there.
Sorry, and thank you to everyone for their comments, by the way. I'm just putting them on screen. We will... sorry. There are links in the video description that you can follow that let you sign up as a monthly subscriber. And thank you for asking. You have saved me the mortification of having to bring it up without somebody asking. So thank you, sir or madam. Sorry, Chloe, go ahead.
No worries, Gideon. I think just in terms of, unpacking maybe DearSA also as an organization of where we began and where we are today, I think it's almost chalk and cheese. And there's been a lot of modifications along the way, and also a lot of patience, I think, from everybody all around. We've gone through a lot of different processes and a lot of manual intervention, and these, it's all kind of come together, and also a lot with the viewers and public's assistance with that, as well as a great in-house team. So I think in terms of growth, which direction do I start with? Is
So
this all becoming relative to us internally?
I think with regards to optimizing our online platform is a big step. And that's something that Rob has been envisioning for a long time, which is like awkward that I'm not making him talk about it. But we are in the process of revamping the website to make it more user-friendly, faster to load, more secure, all these sorts of things. But that and it's a bit of a rebrand as well, I think.
Yeah, I think it's almost like a relaunch, because the platform's constantly developing, and it's taken 4 years to get to this point. And as the environment changes, we have to adapt the platform to that changing environment. So it's always ongoing. But yeah, it started off as pretty much a hobby and a side project, and really never expected it to get as far as it did. Will you load shed there, Chloe? But you're back.
I'm back, sorry.
But anyway,
Yes.
you're back. But anyway, it's definitely took off beyond our wildest dreams, and I think you can both attest to that. It's the growth has been almost uncontrollable in that sense, in our subscriber base and the number of people who have used the platform. And for that reason, we've had to expand it. There's no server in South Africa that can pretty much handle that kind of traffic, and we had to split it over several servers, sometimes up to about 7 running at the same time, just to run the platform. So we've migrated it now into a cloud operation that auto expands to our needs, and has almost unlimited resources. So it can definitely handle the traffic. Also, we've had to develop the way the system operates and the way people interact with it, constantly developing stuff on the back end to make sure the data is sound and valid and not corrupted. We've had issues in the past where people have injected data into it, but luckily we've picked all of those up. So we've got measures in place. We learn as we go, and yeah, it's been an absolutely wonderful time. And quite honestly, we've still got a long way to go. The sky's the limit in this, and judging by the success and growth of the platform and subscriber base, we can start there, Chloe. Then it's really, if we continue on that trajectory, then really it's going to be huge. And the exciting prospect, as far as growth of the platform is expanding it into other regions where democracy does take place and the public can have a say on democratic processes. But I'll let Chloe continue with that one. Off you go.
Thanks for that, Rob. I think maybe also for the viewers to understand, we probably wear about 20 different hats in a day. That's why when we say which part are we growing, it's all of it, and it's all the time. And as Rob has so eloquently mentioned there, that the local, I'm not even going to call it, it's been a great project. The local project for us was really exciting, and with that success, even though we've had some little bit of a small stumbling moment here or there, we've overcome that, and that's given us the opportunity to leverage into other regions. And we are aiming to tackle Africa as a project on as a satellite operation project, where we'll, as Rob mentioned, we'll echo with the democratic policies. And from there, we've had a couple of other opportunities arising from the other side of the continent, where we are going to investigate, as well as areas in Europe. And that also links into obviously our funding opportunities, because to run these systems, to run all of these processes, it's definitely intensive. And as you can think, the IT architecture around it as well is certainly an art in its own. And I think Rob deserves about 10 medals for having to juggle all these server capacities at a stage, because there is no option but to just keep the public participation going, the comments coming. So sometimes a lot of people will ask, what's happened to the counter? My counters, my comments not counting. And it's not at all the case. We count everything. It's just sometimes we need to make some refinery processes just to offload some capacity. So that is, definitely a work in progress for us. And we're really excited to look at the global expansion. And, again, just growing together with our network and supporters. We get a lot of outside SA submissions through our campaigns as well, which is lovely to see. And I think, that also just shows the heart of South Africans. They'll always be present and connected to their country, even if they're no longer here.
And Chloe, I think that's a great way to just end the section before we bring our guest on, is that Sharon mentioned a TikTok video about DearSA that she made that got 18,000 views at 400 shares. That's wonderful. This is the sort of stuff that helps us hugely, as a sense of there's still a great many people who don't know who we are and what we do, and I understand it's difficult to dominate in the outside sphere. And I think this is also where Ramon's question comes in: will we be using YouTube in the future? The whole purpose of these streams is to close a feedback and communication loop with the public who participate in these processes, so we can at least we found that there was a huge shortcoming in giving you guys feedback about what your comments have achieved. Where is the thing you commented on in the process? What's happened to it? What is happening to it? What can be done about it? And please tell us in the comment section how often you'd like to hear from us. Please not every day, but how often you'd like us to do something like this, so we can keep that feedback loop closed, that we can have tight interaction, that we can hear your suggestions, because the suggestions that we've gotten via our public relations center, who's been phoning people who have commented on the various campaigns. And it's not just for fundraising. Yes, there's a fundraising element to it, but the feedback they got from the participants has been vital in how we are structuring things going forward. That said, I would like to introduce and finally bring Martin van Staden on, who Chloe's screen flickering on and off as a potential load shedding rolling blackout consequence was a great ping for this conversation we're having. Martin, thank you for joining us at very short notice. It's always good to see you.
Yeah, no problem. Thank you for having me on. It's a great honor to be here.
Well, you are our first guest on our first live stream, so this one's for the history books, if I can be that hubristic. But here's the thing. I think everyone in the comment section, unless they'd like, speak now, forever hold your peace, ladies and gentlemen. If you want to hear the sad backstory about why ESKOM is as dysfunctional as it is, I think almost everyone in South Africa with 17 years of experience, lived experience, for the dreaded term, knows exactly why it is the way it is. The question, though, that's been elusive, is if you watch the mainstream media and read the mainstream media, is what should we do to fix it, Martin? Are we going to just start solar panels and hydroelectrics and full-on renewables, or is there something more to it, perhaps, than the green revolution to keep the lights on?
Yeah, no, look, that's the important thing, and those of you who have followed my work in any kind of sustainable sense know that I detest defeatism and unconstructive hopelessness. So the idea of just revisiting how screwed we are as a matter of electricity is not something that makes me get up at night. There's a big disaster porn community in South Africa who like saying, no, we're done. Point of no return has passed. So look at how bad everything is. We're all gonna be doomed in powerlessness. That's not my approach. I think that there are answers to these issues, and I think there's a policy approach, and then there is a more practical element to everything. Now the policy approach to how we get out of this rut is liberalization. Simple as that. And that encompasses deregulation, that encompasses demonopolization, and that encompasses privatization. Those are the three aspects of what South Africa needs from a policy perspective to get itself out of this incredible position that the state has put us in. And then on a practical note, there's what we call at Sakeliga state proofing. And that's the more difficult bit, believe it or not. I think liberalization is the more intuitive, the more common sense approach to say that, listen, we have all of our eggs in the single basket of ESKOM. That's not sustainable. The idea that there was this this great past, or this great nirvana, where we had ESKOM and it was generating cheap and reliable power for everyone, and that was just great, and we should return to that. It's an incredibly dangerous sentiment, and it's also just a misrepresentation of the reality. ESKOM was not under the surface as efficient as people would like to think that it was. The work of Nicholas Wood Smith, an economic historian, is invaluable in this regard. There was a few bouts of load shedding before 94. Not enough, nothing as bad as we have today. But the fact of the matter is that the issues that we're sitting with today was baked in. It was baked into ESKOM at an institutional level. This was always going to happen if you have a democratic system where the next government might be idiots and might be criminals. We won the jackpot. They were both idiots and criminals. So that institutional failure was built into ESKOM from the word go, when we said that everyone in South Africa is going to be dependent on a single power utility. And that was a huge mistake. And that is something that we shouldn't perpetuate. I know a lot of people like to think that incompetence is the big issue. A lack of expertise is the big issue. A lack of funding for ESKOM is the big issue. That is not the big issue. Those are contributing factors. But we need to fundamentally reform ESKOM if we want to get out of the rut. And that means the monopoly needs to end. That's in fact the most important thing. ESKOM can no longer have a monopoly, and in fact, on paper, it doesn't have a monopoly. The government achieves its monopoly in a very underhanded way. The Electricity Regulation Act doesn't once refer to ESKOM, but it does say that the government has a discretion for who it will license to trade electricity, to generate electricity, and it may set conditions as it pleases. And lo and behold, the only power producer in South Africa, or the only notable one that is licensed to provide coal and nuclear power, is ESKOM. So it has a de facto monopoly, and that needs to end. The electricity market needs to be thrown open to anyone who wants to break into it and start generating power. So there is the demonopolization, hugely important, but then also the deregulation aspect. The fact that the CEO of ESKOM can go on 2 recent podcast engagements and casually talk about how you will never get approval for another, not even ESKOM would get approval for another coal-fired power station, for another nuclear reactor, because there's an environmental approvals process that is impossible to get through. You will just not get approval. The fact that a senior government civil servant, the CEO of ESKOM, can say that in this situation is a huge cause for concern, and that should indicate to us the importance of deregulation. That environmental approvals process needs to disappear. It just isn't. It doesn't gel with our reality. So that's the policy approach. There needs to be deregulation. There needs to be demonopolization. And then the third thing, privatization. Now that's it's important, but it's not that important. I think for most of us, the fact that ESKOM exists is not a big issue. It can stick around. But the fact of the matter is ESKOM is the largest scale power producer on the continent, not just in South Africa. And if we would like to benefit from that in any sustainable sense into the future, it would be best if the private sector took the reins and no longer had to adhere to ideological prescripts, centralist prescripts from the government, from the ANC. So privatization would be good, but it's not the thing that is gonna pull us out of the rut. That is on the policy side. Sure.
On that, and that those are entirely sensible things you've said and obvious. I mean, imagine if we were stuck in a country where SAA was our only airline. where our only mobile network was run by Telkom, and where our
Mhm.
only form of media we could consume, whether it's television or film or radio, was only SABC, it would be a catastrophe. And I always found it interesting that people are opposed to the idea of deregulating and demonopolizing electricity production, as if for some reason it wouldn't work. That aside, these good ideas that you've just illustrated and brought up, how does one actually go from taking them as ideas and making them practical? Because I think we've talked about good ideas, and this is not because it's a bad thing to talk about good ideas. It's a very good thing, but people start getting impatient.
Yeah.
Members of the public get impatient with people like us
Yeah.
on screens going, we've got these good ideas, but they feel no implementation. So when we talk action, what do we need to do to actually make these ideas implemented, to make that change?
Yeah, so if we want to take the policy route, I think the start is quite simple, and that's already been identified as Section 8.1 of the Electricity Regulation Act. That provision is can almost be thought to be the source of all evil when it comes to our electricity situation, and it provides that nobody may generate, transmit, distribute, or trade in electricity without a license. And the solution to that is quite simple if we're going to take the policy route, and that is to change the word nobody to anybody. Anybody may generate, transmit, distribute, or trade in electricity without the license. Now, it's not quite that simple. People have pointed out that, of course, you cannot just plug into the grid and start generating electricity. You need to, it needs to be safe, it needs to be efficient. But my answer to that is that's kind of not our problem. That's DearSA's problem. That's ESKOM's problem. They should come to you. Firstly, they should be begging South Africans to generate electricity and building generating plants and so on. And then they should come to you and at their own cost plug you in safely, make sure that your current and everything is safe and efficient. That's on the policy side. Now, unfortunately, as you guys at Dear South Africa well know, the government doesn't tend to listen. And then for me, as someone who works in policy on a day-by-day basis, I would give nothing more than to be in a Western-style democracy where when you send an email, you get a prompt response from the Director General, and they're like, "Yeah, no, great idea, thanks. Let's have a look at this." We don't live in that society. Dear South Africa's great strength is in that you can leverage numbers, and as you showed a few minutes ago on the Health Act regulations, and I think this is probably true for many and maybe most of the campaigns that you run. Most people oppose the government's completely destructive, economically destructive and socially destructive policies, and the fact that this is the case doesn't seem to perturb government at all unless you have this leveraging of numbers. And that kind of brings us to the situation whereby the policy reform that is necessary is only possible if we can leverage this public outcry for it. I know it's technical legal stuff, but it's that's the way you do it. But on a more practical level, and this is what I've been coming around to recently, because I don't see how we're in this emergency and the government still doesn't quite take liberalization seriously, how we can do it by asking and by demanding. I don't think that's gonna cut it. And that's what I referred to earlier, and that is the practical side. It's what we at Sakeliga call state proofing. And I need to warn everyone here that I'm not a traditional lawyer. I'm not here to tell you that section so-and-so of Act so-and-so provides so-and-so, and therefore the legal position is so-and-so. These lawyers are very useful, and we should listen to them if we know it's good for us, but I'm not one of them. Now, the legal tradition that I represent here and elsewhere is one that prizes eternal legal principles detached from any particular government. And I don't really care what the legislation says. I don't really care what the regulations say, because these are just manifestations of the current opinions or the recent past opinions of politicians and regulators. That is not the manifestation of the law in a deeper sense, that we are required to respect. I mean, this has been pointed out centuries ago by the Roman thinker Tacitus, who is quite famously known for the quote, "The more corrupt the state, the more numerous the laws." He wasn't there referring to the idea of the rule of law and the law that demands respect. He was there referring to legislation, regulations, the edicts that people like Bekitele and Guerre Montashe just issue from the hip every now and then. That is not law that I think is worthy of respect, even though it does demand obedience. When you look at South Africa's history, we live in a very interesting time now, all around the world, in fact. There was a time in our history where the British government in the Cape Colony instructed the London Missionary Society to enforce the colonial policy amongst the Khoi. The London Missionary Society said, no, we don't think we will. And the British government accepted that. They said, well, okay, we're frustrated, but fair enough. And a little bit to the north in the Transvaal Republic, there's a thing that stuck with me. The president there, Thomas Francois Burgers, called together a commando, a citizens' army, effectively, to take on the King Sekhukhune. And the commando went with him for a while, but after a while, they were like, yeah, I think we need to go back to our farms and tend to our crops. And they just left their president in the field of battle. It's not like he charged them with treason and had them executed. I'm sure he was enraged, but he allowed it. He was like, well, they made their decision. That's not the case today. Saying no to the government today is dangerous. You will be fined. You will be arrested. But state-proofing, at least the way that I think it should be properly conceived of, is the process by which we rediscover the fundamental inalienable right to say no to the government. It is necessarily a slow and multifaceted process, and we don't begin at the end. We don't start by saying no. We start by creating the capacity to say no. And currently we don't have that capacity. Only organizations like Solidarity, like AfriForum, like DearSA Africa, Sakeliga, are creating this capacity, and with a great speed. I must say that is quite admirable. Kusati would have been a great ally in the war to get a countervailing force center of power, but that's not happening. They've made their bed with the state. Now, Dear South Africa, I'll get to the power element of this in a moment, but I do think that the context is important. Dear South Africa has played a central role thus far in state-proofing. By doing something ingenious, and I don't know if this was ever intentional or not. But you
Rob
expose...
would have to answer that one.
I will get to that. But maybe you don't want to answer it because it might reveal your hand. But you exposed and you continue to expose through these campaigns the lie at the heart of democratic appeals that the South African government constantly makes to, we are a democratic government, we believe in democracy. With almost every new policy that the government proposes, and I think without exception they are destructive, tens of thousands of people, hundreds of thousands of people say no. That one chart that you showed, people just rejected the policy entirely, almost a third. They didn't even want to engage on the peculiars. The answer was simply no. And the government usually responds by shrugging its shoulders. Abraham Lincoln's principle of government by the people, for the people, and of the people is not sustainably applicable in South Africa. And that doesn't mean you guys need to stop doing what you're doing, but you are leveraging that strength in numbers to show the government in most cases, and in the most important cases, expropriation without compensation, the firearms amendment bill, that the balance of forces is not on their side. Now, the sooner that South Africans realize, I think, that in general the government isn't interested in listening to it, the sooner they realize that the answer to building this capacity must come from themselves, so that they can say no and so that they can mean no. Now, how does this all apply to electricity? I think that with the current load shedding, with the current crisis fresh in our minds, I mean, I'm sure many of the people watching now currently have load shedding. State proofing is nowhere more immediately important than here. And this is a crisis that is entirely produced by the state. And it's an emergency. It requires swift action. And we know that ESKOM is not capable of swift action. It is only the genius of dispersed knowledge and activity amongst ordinary South Africans that I think could avert total disaster. And instead of government jumping on this and taking advantage of South Africa's great natural resources to solve the problem, the government engages in debate. We're still debating: should we have a green energy mix? Should we phase out fossil fuels, and so forth? But we can just see that is the government's focus is simply not where it should be. And this is where I think the common law provides us with the answers that could practically see us getting out of load shedding. And these concepts still exist, and they are impossibility, necessity, and force majeure. Impossibility is a principle of contract law and tells us that if a contract requires you to do the impossible, the law will not expect you to comply. Requiring the impossible is not permissible, and the law will not make itself guilty of requiring injustice. And this is also a principle of the rule of law if you read someone like Lon L. Fuller, where the law, you won't have a society of the rule of law if the law requires you to do the impossible. Then there's necessity. It's a defense in criminal law and in the law of delict that relates mostly to property and trespass. And effectively, it says that you are allowed to defend your lawful interests by conducting yourself unlawfully if you truly have no choice. It allows you to break open the car where a child is dying of heat stroke. It, in fact, allows you to kill someone if someone else has a gun to your head and says you have to do it or we'll shoot you. That is what necessity allows you to do. And that is, it gives effect to this idea that it's better to ask for forgiveness than for permission. And then finally, force majeure is the principle of overwhelming force. If something is totally out of your control, the law will not expect you to overcome that force. And all of these things are interrelated, and they show us that the common law recognizes that in many circumstances, it would be unreasonable to require South Africans to comply with what the government requires in, for instance, electricity regulations and legislation. And I think this is where municipalities come in. And this is where the lobbying really comes in. The idea that you are closer to your municipality. You're not dealing with the central state. So this is the obvious place to start. Municipalities' ratepayers' property and interests, and even municipalities' own electricity infrastructure is being damaged beyond repair by increasingly long periods of rolling blackouts. And it is clear that municipalities are expected to foot the bill for this, and that's why our rates keep going up, even though we don't get a concomitant increase in service. So in my view, and of course I'm speaking entirely hypothetically here, this is an academic exercise, I just need to get that disclaimer out of the way. I think municipalities can, in theory, simply start building their own power generating facilities, whether coal-fired, nuclear, or renewable, and distribute that within their jurisdictions. And I think they can do this because it is impossible for them to continue complying with national restrictions. And if they are taken to task, as they invariably will be, by the central government for doing this, I think they can rely, by analogy, of course, to the necessity defense and on force majeure. And there's the statement that possession is 9/10 of the law. And that also relates to asking for forgiveness rather than for permission. And that is that if, hypothetically, again, of course, if a municipality were to build a power generating facility under cover of darkness and start getting people off load shedding, getting power to the municipality, I don't see a court, at least not a current South African court, saying we have to tear that down. I don't see that happening. The court may say, listen, you've done wrong, here's a fine. It will probably say you have to give the power station to ESKOM, but it will not say tear it down, because a court will not place itself against the facts of the situation, and the facts will demonstrate that there is power being generated, and people are now becoming dependent on that power. Of course, the facility needs to be safe, but the courts will, if that is the case, in the final analysis, I think, allow it. So that's the more practical side of this thing. It's a very long story, but I do think that we have our strength in numbers. I know someone else said that there's more of us than of them. There are more ordinary South Africans than regulators trying to impose a green agenda on South Africa. So start lobbying municipalities, hypothetically, of course, to say, listen, we simply cannot stick around and wait for ESKOM and DearSA and Andre de Ruyter and Gwede Mantashe to come and solve this problem. The state created the problem. The problem arises from ESKOM and DearSA. It's not wet coal, it's not the rain, it's not the weather. It is the state's built-in institutions. So the solution really lies with us to start lobbying, to say, listen, the common law has made provision for this situation. It does allow for us to do what is necessary if our vital interests, our very life and death interests, are at risk.
So that actually it makes it sound. I can smell a campaign coming. I can.
Yeah, me too. I was strategizing something in my head there. I was like, perhaps, right, let's put the comments out in the question out in the comments now. So, who wants us to run a campaign, and which municipality should we start with?
Yes, guys, and I think it's going to be a big collaborative effort as well, with some old allies and some new ones. And there we go, Charles. Evening, Squire. Good to see you here. Practical example of what you're mentioning, Martin, is ETOL and its failure. Fixing and managing municipal sewage plants or fixing your own roads. Actio I'm going to butcher this Latin. Negotiorum gestio, tried and tested. I apologize to any Romans in the comment section that I've done to your language. Please don't crucify me. But
There's only one Roman.
you know, I called him Roman for a long time, and he never corrected me, not once.
He was correct too.
He was like shell shock from it. So, yeah, he did take it personally. It's very sad. But he took it so personally, he made a typo. It's very uncharacteristic. And on that awful bombshell, please, in fact, Martin, thank you for coming on and giving us a practical, hard-hitting sort of roadmap out of this. And I'm going to defer to Chloe and Rob after this, but my personal takeaway from this is it really does start with us. It starts with us attaining a critical mass of pressure, and with that pressure, directing it in the correct direction or to the correct coordinates and applying it there and keeping it up until eventually the resistance breaks and we get what we ask for, because that's all that seems to work. Then I'm going to ask Rob and then I'm going to ask Chloe. Rob?
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. Thanks, Martin, for that fantastic synopsis, and this is highly educational as well. It's absolutely fascinating. Thank you. And I just like to point out that this is a perfect example of collaboration between civil society organizations and the power and impact that it can create. In the past, civil organizations were created to tackle government issues where government was falling short or where they had overreached or overstepped some boundary. An organization would tackle them head on. Times have changed now, and as we've seen here, and through many people watching this will know that we collaborate with organizations such as Sakeliga, AfriForum, and many others, from the religious front to absolutely everything. And we do that for very good reasons. We are not experts in the field, and no one can claim to be the single expert in any field. But together, if we collaborate, then we can form a group and expert opinions can arise from that, and solutions also arise from that collaboration. So it's very powerful, and we just provide a vehicle, as Martin pointed out, and it's an effective vehicle. And we are experts in what we do, but collaboration with organizations such as Martin's really produce good results. And I'd love to see a campaign come from this discussion. What does the public want us to do? Should we launch something? I know I already jumped that question early on, but should we tackle it on? And do you think it will be successful? Do you personally believe that it will make a difference? Because I kind of do. I think it will. And it's all about, as Martin said, bringing the power back to the people. The solutions lie within us, but not as individuals, as a collaborative civil society that is coordinated and working together for a common good.
That's puts it very much succinctly to the point, Rob. Chloe, your thoughts on going forward with this idea?
Thanks, Gideon, and just thanks to Martin as well. Thank you for joining us. I think that was really insightful, and just to touch on what you said, what Gideon has said, and Rob for that matter, we've actually seen a little bit of these patterns, and I don't think we even realized it with the Embedded Generation campaign, where a government put out the request to get the feedback on self-generation, and not only did we get that approved, and government could see where the feedback was with the public, but the public united, and we actually got a higher megawatt out of government than what was initially planned. And I think if we all just start, and that's just it, you've got to start. If you never start, you'll never start winning the battle. But it's us at the end of the day that gets affected, and trying to economically move forward. We've had some hurdles, and we all recognize those. So I think to recognize the success, I just wanted to mention that out of, I think we had about 16,000 odd responses there. That was a really major win, and just kudos to everybody that did participate, and you did make a difference, and you're going to continue making that difference.
That's the thing. Also, I think we have overrun the mark a little bit. So, if ladies and gentlemen, I know we may have missed some comments, we may have missed some questions. If you have any that we've missed, please put them in the comment section now. I'm just going to ask Clay, we need to do a disclaimer on this one. We recently obtained a grant from a European Union subsidiary. We're quite happy about that, and we do need to disclose it. So I'm going to leave the honors to you, because you were front and center on that, to do it while I'm waiting for people's questions to roll in.
Okay, perfect. Thanks for that, Gideon. So just for everybody's feedback, this was a very exciting time for all of us. We really felt this was a monumental success, and it is linked to the AGA Civic Tech Africa project, where it's linked into a couple of other different unions. We've got the European Union as well as the German Federation that's also linked. So there's multiple collaborative parties, and DearSA went through a 3-step process to win the funding, the grant. And after those three rounds, we were successful, which was a tremendous success. We've been allocated our grant with, I think, 2 other organizations that operate in Africa, and we're going through the procedure over the next couple of months. So with that, we do give mention to Civic Tech on that, and the multiple spin-off projects that are coming from their side. Just to explain a little bit about what they do in a very quick nutshell, is that they focus on civil society, and they are supporting just South Africa because of the platform expansion, and growth that we are trying to achieve. And with that, obviously we've had to ramp up, as Rob mentioned, on the platform. So that's helping us in a long way with the operational side. So we're very thankful and grateful for that as a team. Thanks, Gideon.
No, that's fantastic. So, okay, I haven't got any new questions yet. However, I think we are going to do this quite a few times again. And I think to make it also easier, please do email us comments. And that's the email address, Rob, info@dearsouthafrica.co.za. And we receive those comments. We can read them. We can compile a detailed response when we do the next stream, which there seems to be a desire to do it once a week, but let us know. It might be twice a month. It might be once a month. It might be once a week. It all depends on the sort of feedback you guys want. Also, this is the first one. We really do want to grow this. So I'm going to do that cringy thing that YouTubers do. And I'm a lesser person for doing this. But please like and subscribe. Retching in my mouth. And if you do, and for those that missed it, if you do want to sign up as a contributor or once-off donor, how you can support us is all thanks. Thank you so much. There you go. It's someone wrote it out for me. There is a link in the video description below this where you can sign up and become a contributor. And we really do appreciate all the thousands of people that have helped us build this platform to where it is now, and are helping us build it into what it's going to become. So we will do super chats as soon as we need those subscribers to be allowed to do super chats. That's a trick. Google doesn't like small channels. But yeah, we will definitely be doing a lot more content to keep people updated. This is to close the feedback loop. And I really appreciate, no, not by daily. No, Corona, not going to happen. We appreciate everyone that's tuned in here. Please also do us the favor of sharing this with your friends and family so they can, if they want to know what we're about. I think Rob and Chloe really answered the question well. Martin really dissected the ESKOM problem. And also, let us know if there's anything else you want us to talk about. But final thoughts, and we're wrapping this up. I'm going to start with Rob, then Chloe, then Martin, and I'll try. I need all this time to just think of something wise or snappy to say. Let me close up. So, Rob, go for it.
Oh, okay. Right, because I can say something wise and snappy just off the cuff. Well, I've been known to do that.
No pressure.
Absolutely. No pressure whatsoever. No, I just want to thank everyone for your participation. You know, we could be talking about you can contribute to DearSA or donate and so on, but yes, we do need that. We are a non-profit organization funded wholly by the public and by institutional grants. But the most important thing to us is your participation. It really does make a difference. It's not just your comment going into the ether. We do monitor it. We make sure government reads it. We track your comment all the way through, and we track that government has acknowledged it and considered it in the final decision-making process. So please encourage your friends, your family, even people that you don't like. Encourage them to have their say, sign up for our newsletter, participate in one campaign, and make a difference. Really, it really does happen. You don't need to get out in the street and protest. Just jump on the platform, place the power of public participation in the palm of your hand. I'm going to get into trouble for saying that, aren't I, Ramon? But anyway, that's it. Really have your say. And if you feel that we need to run any campaigns, if we've missed anything, send us a note. Let us know, and we'll launch them. Even if it's a local community campaign, something your municipality is doing, let us know, and we'll assist and make sure it does happen.
Some stuff. Thank you, Rob. Chloe, from your side.
Thanks, Gideon. It's always difficult to follow Rob. He always says the right things. I'll make it quick just because of the time, but I think just to echo the gratitude to everybody. It wouldn't be possible to get to where we are, and just seeing all the comments and the love that's really, really appreciated. And I think I saw a comment, I'm sorry, I can't remember the name right now, but just the thank you for being transparent. We can say the same thing. I think that is something, I personally go through all the comments of everybody through each and every report. So it's not, I can tell you single-handedly, it's not a system just going through it and spitting out feedback. Everything is personal, and I think that personal touch, we hope that you enjoy it as well, and that it is what you're looking for. And just in terms of the communication and feedback loop, that is something we want to enhance. We want to, it gets sort of, DearSA becoming a household name for the right reasons. And I think if there is anything that we need to know, or you'd like to see more, definitely please send it through. And just, it's in closing that we thank you for all of your support.
Chloe, beautiful. Martin, for those who missed it at the beginning when I introduced Martin before he was even on, Martin is a policy advisor for Sakeliga and the Free Market Foundation of South Africa. Martin, where can people find you and the things you guys do? And what are your closing sort of thought suggestions like?
Let me flip that around and give you my closing thoughts, and then say where people can find our work. Just briefly, the peddlers of disaster porn would have you believe that there is something called the point of no return, where things get so bad and that we will be permanently doomed if we let it pass. And I would just like to remind everyone that the Soviet Union was a death cult of genocide, of famine, of poverty, and of repression. And yet within less than a generation of deciding to change course, post-Soviet states like Estonia and Georgia became some of the most prosperous places on the planet. All it takes is grit and determination. It takes an active minority. It never takes a majority to change anything. So never feel dissuaded by the fact that you feel you're only part of a small community, a small group of people saying, let's change course. That's all it takes. I promise you, that's all it takes. You don't need a majority, but don't be a movement individualist. Don't be a mobilization or an organizational individualist. I'm a dogmatic liberal, so I'm a political individualist. But that doesn't work when it comes to driving change in society. Support organizations like Dear South Africa, the IRR, AfriForum, Sakeliga, and Solidarity. These organizations are fighting for us to change course. And even if ESKOM collapses tomorrow, if we're put in total darkness, they're not going to stop. We're going to right the course very quickly when it becomes clear in how much trouble we are. So don't let despair and hopelessness get you. Build bridges. Get to know your community, get to know your neighbors, support these organizations, and appreciate the fact that you have the power within you to help South Africa sail out of this storm. And then just where you can find our work, Sakeliga, it's sakeliga.co.za. All of our stuff is on our website, the Free Market Foundations, freemarketfoundation.com. My work specifically, you can find my website at martinvanstaden.com. You'll find all of my social media links there, but you can follow me on Twitter at Martin_ASFL, and on Facebook, facebook.com/MartinVanStadenLiberty, one word. And yeah, you'll find all of my articles and my media appearances, including this one, on my website. And yeah, just finally, thanks to Dear South Africa for having me on. It's a great honor to be here. You guys do amazing work, and I'm sure you're gonna go from strength to strength. And I will eagerly be monitoring your success and using that to have the advantage of the policy work that we do to really try and get South Africa out of this authoritarian and socialist rut that ideology has plunged us into. Thanks.
Thank you, Martin. And I smell the smoke of impending collaboration on something to do with coal-fired power plants and possibly nuclear ones as well in the very near future. So watch the space, folks. Kermit, I may have, but my inbox is a mess. Please resend it if you don't mind. That is my usual excuse. And now that I've had sufficient time to think of a final comment from my side, the standard thing I always say, ladies and gentlemen and others, you be an active participant in your own rescue. I think we need to stop looking for messiahs in the political landscape, for that one man or woman or whomever that we rely fully on and give all this emotional buy-in because they're going to save us from ourselves or save us from this catastrophe that was created by the political landscape to start off with. The real change starts with us individually. It starts with what we do, our own resilience, the resilience that we nurture and foster in others, whether it's our family members, our community members, whomever we come in contact with, and by creating individual islands of resilience and safety and security and prosperity, and linking those islands together into chains, we form them into continents. And it sounds all very abstract, but it's in our hands, nobody else's. And public participation and following through on it is one way to get your hands directly on the steering wheel of your democracy. Please use it. Thank you for all of you that have used it and will continue to use it. And I think that's the way forward. And I like what Charles has said here. Norway, South Korea, Costa Rica, etc. Hopefully South Africa will follow. And it's a nice positive way to end this. Thank you all for joining me. Have a wonderful rest of the Wednesday evening, and see you all probably very, very soon. Keep an eye on our broadcast schedule. Thank you, and bye-bye.